What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Well Man's Podcast. My name is Bryan. I'm joined with my friend and co-host Keoni Tita. Keoni, how are you today?
Doing wonderful. Just want to congratulate you. You are now a married man. Just got back from your honeymoon.
That's why we've been MIA for a month.
That's right. And I've had a couple of people ask me at the clinic, like, why aren't we doing podcasts anymore? So that was nice to hear without any prompting or anything. So people are definitely listening. So that's good. But congratulations. The wedding was an incredible experience. I loved it. I had the best time. So anyway, but back to reality. And
Yes.
I thought it would be good to talk about love and what it means to us and talk about some thinkers on love. And one of the things that got me thinking about doing this podcast, and we talked about it briefly, was listening to the Philosophize This podcast with the philosopher Erich Fromm, who wrote a book on what is love. And I don't know, what he had to say really just kind of struck me. And so I wanted to talk about kind of his thoughts on it, and then talk about, types of love. And, there's a great book out there. Do you know who the languages of love, the 5 languages of love? Everybody's heard about that book, right? For the most part.
I'm not familiar with the author, but I've heard of the
I should know it off
languages.
the top of my head. So, but anyway, the 5 languages of love, I think it's called, or the 4 languages of love. But anyway, we'll talk briefly about that also. But anyway, so one of the things that Erich Fromm was talking about, he's like, what is love? It's one of these things where we have all experienced it. It's kind of like it's kind of intangible in a sense, right? I mean, it's not like an object, something you can pick up, but yet we all know about it.
Right.
Throughout
Feels like it's ever evolving through kind of the human experience too, and your own personal human experience as well. So you think about that love you had at 14, 15, 16.
Right. Yeah.
Compared to the love of your child and things like that.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of this intangible thing, but also one of these the most powerful human experiences around. I mean, you could even make a case that religions have, been born or nurtured through this concept of love that we all know about. Artwork, poetry, a lot of it's been based on love and all that. But what I really think Fromm kind of hit the nail on the head, though, is this is something that we all want and strive for, but why do we want and strive for love, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it has to do with this feeling of separateness. Even though it's kind of an illusion of being separate, we have this feeling of separateness. So we kind of are looking for love through our community or through our significant other, and romantic love with our partner and stuff like that. And so this is kind of what he was kind of hitting on. Like one of the worst things you can do to a human is to isolate them and keep them from other humans, right? And without other humans, you're kind of cutting that cord of love. So I kind of got that kind of, it's like this feeling of separateness, and we don't want to, we to allay that feeling, we kind of look for love.
Well, he talks about it being like the only answer to this, like, existential loneliness, which on the flip side, in my opinion, I mean, that is, while we have like this illusion of separateness from things around us, but it's also still very much the reality. I mean, at the end of the day, you and I are going to venture into the great unknown independently at whatever independent time that happens to be, and so on and so forth. And there is that kind of existential loneliness that you kind of always have some awareness of as a human. And then I feel like the times where where you really feel that love intensely, or when that existential loneliness is completely like faded out, like the noise of the love, the emotion, the intensity of the love is so far beyond that existential loneliness that you could possibly feel, that you sway all the way into this action of the verb of love in those moments. Mm-hmm. And then it really is just kind of combating that constant background noise that we do have, this existential loneliness at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. You said that. So how do we battle that? One way to battle that is to search for it through romantic love, right?
Yep, right.
So we are looking for a partner, or for friends or anything like that, but with a partner with romantic love, that's one way to get rid of the and I agree, it's like, at one point it's an illusion, but it's reality, right? We all brought into this world alone, we're going to go out of this world alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the reality of the situation. On the other hand, we are all connected to everybody too.
Right.
So one strategy is to find romantic love. So I was talking to my wife and I wanted to know, like, I asked her today and a few days ago, like, how do you define love? Like, what is love to you? And then and how do you define love at its base level? Right.
And so when you say base level, just give me an idea of what.
So
what do you mean?
We're going to talk. So I feel like love at its basic level. So let's forget about romantic love, and we'll talk about kind of what are known as pseudo forms of love, like the 7 types of love the Greeks defined. But at its base level, what do you do when you love somebody? What is the basis of what you're doing? So okay. Is it kind of like you scratch my back, I scratch yours? Is that love? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it a transactional thing? Mm-hmm. I think that's an immature kind of love, right?
Right.
It's like, I mean, on one hand, yeah, you kind of expect that. I mean, I was talking with Jillian, it's like, yeah, you're married and you're kind of in it together, right? And so you kind of have expectations of each other. So I get that. Is love truly, at the base level, is it truly unconditional in that regard? And I'm not so sure. But at its base level, I would also say it's definitely not transactional. It's not like, well, I'm only going to love you if you do this for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I agree with you at that base level, not romantic love, and then I agree that obviously it's not necessarily the best type of love, that transactional love, but at its base level, yeah, it doesn't have, or shouldn't, or does not have that, when I love my cat, I don't really care what she does or doesn't do. She could be a crack addict for all I care, and I still love her.
Right. But you're hitting on something there, because so I love my cat, I love my nieces and nephews, I love my fellow humans and stuff like that as best I can. So to show that love, then I am going to basically try to, I don't know, eliminate suffering in their lives as best I can, or try to build them up as best I can without expecting something in return. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're still going to love your cat, whether it purrs on you or not,
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to take a little sidestep because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I wanted to talk to you about this, Keoni, but I have been, so my younger sister's pregnant, kids are like swirling around me. I got married, now everyone wants to ask about that. Treating a few people who are parents to like teenagers at various ages, like getting ready to head off to college, just starting high school, just making that jump from middle school to high school type things. And one thing you said about not, having them kind of go through, I guess the least, not necessarily, that the least amount of life, like scraping, kind of grind through life, and kind of protecting them in that way. I've started developing this opinion where that is like really, really harmful. And we almost have, and I've seen this, and I'm just going to say, I've seen it more so in mothers than I have like fathers, where they are more so inclined to be like, oh, my XYZ son can't do this because his anxiety is through the roof.
Right.
And then like the kid actually goes on and does it just fine. Right. And they kind of push and try and cement these emotions in the people you love.
Right.
It's just been something I've been experiencing, seeing, and kind of recognizing in my own life in various ways.
Right.
And it's this really weird, in my opinion, kind of gross way of loving. And it's not gonna create this very successful human being that was super sheltered through that, or when they turn 18 or 19 and they have to start actually kind of grinding against the resistance of life, for a better way of explaining it. But I've just been thinking about it a lot, and it is really destructive way of loving.
No, that's a great point, right? So you're talking about thinking
like loving isn't just taking someone's suffering away.
Right. And being uncomfortable or suffering or something can also be a form of love. Like you're there to watch them go through that, but you also, maybe they do have to go through the grind and be a little bit uncomfortable, and that is a form of love. No, I totally get that, and you make a great point with that. Absolutely. Because what are you trying to do? If you want to uphold somebody the best that you can, that doesn't mean that you make their life perfect and fluffy and no stress or anything like that.
But so do you feel like that is kind of what Fromm was talking, or I forget, the Stephen West, the guy who did the podcast, talking about Fromm's kind of philosophy here, is Fromm's making the point the whole time that love is a actionable verb, and the best way to love, or the truest way to love, is to love yourself first. And then the rest of love is almost passive. Like you make an active choice to do it, but it passively falls into place once you love yourself enough and develop the self-care and love for you to provide to others, kind of that, oxygen mask first on you type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, because I see it all the time, and I think it is something that we deal with a lot. How do you, where is that stemming from? Talking about this kind of destructive, taking away people's suffering, trying of love. And where do we, is that an ego thing? Is that more so really overbearingly trying to look out for someone? But even that said, I still feel like it's a personal ego thing, possibly more so than just trying to, I don't know, make sure someone walks through life in slippers instead of tennis shoes type of thing.
Yeah. I
know that was not clear.
Well, I do think, love is kind of one of these things where you have to let people make their own choices and fall down, but you're there for support. So for example, let's say my best friend is, a drug addict, or, abuses alcohol, and he's constantly putting stress in my life because of that. For example, showing up at all hours of the night and, just creating stress in my life. You want to help that person, but you also should understand that this is the path that they've chosen,
right?
But you also don't want to sacrifice your own integrity in taking care of them.
Right.
I think that speaks to Fromm's type of thing, where you have to love yourself first fully before you can love somebody else in that way. So if you're constantly being slapped in the face by somebody you love, you don't, if you truly love yourself, you're not at some point you're going to be, I'm not going to put up with this. If your son or daughter is going through whatever they're going through at some point, there's the whole thing of tough love. Like, this is what I have to do to take care of myself, and I will be here for you or whatever, whenever you need to. I mean, to me, that's more loving than being, oh, well, let me just, give you $1 million and your life is solved,
Right.
solved. That type of thing. I guess it's kind of like, how can we help them love themselves more so that they can get out of that, without sacrificing our own integrity.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the golden rule, right? The golden rule, which do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, which has been, was kind of written down in ancient Egypt. It's been used in all religions throughout the world. It goes way back, even beyond ancient Egypt. I mean, I think there's an evolutionary context to that.
Okay, so that's funny. This is like pretty intensely documented through history. This golden rule saying.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it was first.
It wasn't just like Miss Hoback or whatever, my third grade teacher who had it.
No, and I was in this discussion with somebody today where we can go into it more, but where they're saying, well, that's a Christian concept. Yeah, it certainly is, but it didn't originate with Christianity, and all religions have a form of that. Buddhism, all of them, but it is basically, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And I think it's fitting with what you're saying there, right? Like, you are who you are based on your trials and tribulations. And, maybe you would like to change some of that and not gone through a hard enough time, but it's made you who you are. And you're able to, based on what you've gone through or what I've gone through, able to, go through life in a more critical, self-loving way. By doing that. Like, I would not, it would almost be kind of like a hell in a way to have your object of love, let's say it's a person, and you are, completely focused on them, making sure that their life is cushy and, nothing, bad will come of it. It almost creates like a kind of evil, if you will. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like kind of the upbringing that the North Korean dictator had. He was shoved away to go to school. He was by himself a lot. He was told that he, or a lot of dictators, I should say, or through history, or kings or whatever, just using these examples where they're only around people that have wealth, and it's all about making their life cushy and comfortable. And what do you end up with? A lot of times you end up with a madman.
Yeah.
That type of thing, who hasn't lived real life, or somebody who's born with a silver spoon and can't, and therefore lacks empathy. Again, that's another form of love with people who are less fortunate than them.
It keeps circling around to me like the difference of like a mentor type love, where they love themselves, they're fully invested in themselves, they want you to do equally as, they want you to do well, but it's important to them, but at the same time they're the mentor. Like, it's either going to go left or right, and they can only put what they put into it, and they fully support and are there to pick you up, educate you, and make sure life isn't too cushy and is appropriately challenged for you to grow. But also,
and for that, you need growth, right? To do that, you need the resistance. Enables growth by so as Fromm was saying, it's like love is an active striving of growth, for the growth and happiness of the loved person, and it's kind of rooted in one's own capacity to love. So anyway, I liked his concept, but your point is well taken, because I do think it has to be explained, kind of explained out like that. And also Jillian's point was really well taken with me too, because love should be non-transactional, but at some point it kind of is transactional in a way.
It's really hard for it not to be in today's day and age. I mean, it just
right. But it doesn't mean you don't love that person. So for example, if I'm married to an alcoholic who's running up our credit cards constantly, and just making my life hell and we're trying to get help or do whatever, at some point, if to, at some point to love yourself and also to love them, you're not going to put up with that. You're something has to give. Or if you're in an abusive relationship, at some point, if you really kind of love yourself and you really want to love the other person, you're not going to be in that relationship. So love is certainly not staying in a relationship that not only does harm to you, but is ultimately doing harm to the other person too.
Well, if there's anything we definitely identified in the 25 minutes or whatnot is tough love is definitely a form of love that exists and seems like it may be necessary. Now, the toughness of it is to be debated, right. But like, we were talking a little bit ago about, so like my best man at my wedding, he came and visited me in January or February, and he was like, "You are fat." And I was overweight at the time. I really was. And it was like, you know what, man? I really couldn't appreciate you more for just saying it and kind of being that tough love kind of mentor role where it's like, hey, you're not living up to your own standard here. And that is a form of love to me. And that,
of course.
Really meant the world to
me. That's great. And it maybe he could have said it better than that, but yes, at least
sure. He knew his audience though.
he knew the audience. So he got away with it.
But to me, a true form of love versus, more of a transactional love where maybe you have some friends that wouldn't say that to you, but maybe they say it to your other friend and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And really playing that, kind of that independent, loving role, regardless of, it almost kind of circles back to me of kind of regardless of the emotion like the person feels that you're kind of enacting this on, as long as you're doing it with love and kind of having that golden rule type mentality going forward, that it's love.
Yeah.
Like in its purest form.
And yeah, so in its purest form, we're talking about, we brought up like loving your cat, your animal, your best friend, right? Your wife, your family members, so that's the base. That's love at its basic level. Now we can offshoot into kind of like different types of pseudo love, right? And the Greeks had all kinds of names for that. So
of course they did.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but because people know this too, there's all different kinds of love, but I do think there is kind of like a foundational thing, and I think the golden rule kind of speaks to that. I think and that and within that you also have this concept of tough love, which is another way to uphold the person and help them grow. But eros, right? That's like the romantic, passionate love. It's like the lustful love.
Funny, and that's the first one on the list.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, right? Because I think that is kind of a love that people get trapped in, right? In their 20s. Certainly. And teenagers, they kind of mistake that for love. I think it's more of a transitory love, not that you can always, with the object of your love or whatever, always have the eros there. But for a lot of people, that it's that physical love is transitory. That doesn't define the love that we just talked about. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and that's a much different kind of love, right? Especially when we're talking about friends, family, and stuff like that. You're usually talking about your significant other or your lover when it goes with that, and usually it's like this is transitory and usually felt a lot at the beginning, maybe, of a relationship. Not that it can't be cultivated
right
throughout your relationship with your significant other, but yeah, they just, it's lust and sexual attraction is kind of what it is. But a relationship built on this alone, it needs to, you need to go
16-year-olds.
Well, yeah, you can't define it on this alone, right?
Right.
And this is the love that culturally we are all taught to kind of seek based on books and movies and things like that. And I think it kind of gives us a false sense of love, based on our culture and society and what we think of love. So that's why I think it's talking about tough love, like you were talking about, like, oh, it's a really good thing if you have this passion, eros type love, fall head over heels in love, like that teenage puppy love type thing. And it's a good thing, tough love, that you get your heart broken so you can, learn about it and all that.
Yeah, I think you said that to me a few times.
Well, yeah, I've been through it. Yeah. And not only that, my older brother, and my mother said that to me and all that stuff,
Yeah.
So
goes back to kind of, you want to have some of these growing moments that are painful.
Yeah. Right.
Because they'll help you cultivate these next stages of love, or these next types of love.
Right. So, and then the next one is philia. That's kind of affectionate. It's a friendly love. It's like a soul to soul type love. Like, you just compatible. You're affectionate. You respect the person. There's no, it's certainly not based on the eros or lustful stuff. This is another aspect of love. It's an encouraging kind of love. It's the type of love that makes for a true friendship. So, and again, so what are we doing? We're with both of these types of love, especially with this one, ultimately what we're trying to do, at least in the moment, whether it's transitory or whatever, but you certainly can build both of these and nurture them, but you're also trying to uphold and help the person grow without, really depending on something that is, transactional, so, and that can be hard, especially with the first one, right? Where it's a lustful type of love, where this love to me kind of speaks to more of a foundational love.
Okay.
And then you got storage love, which is unconditional. It's the familial love. I think it's best applied to the way parents feel for their children, or people feel towards their pets. Would be a really even better one. It's like a protective love. It's like an acceptance of who and what they are, and you love them, and whether you agree with it or not. You're not expecting reciprocation of it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like a niece and nephew type feeling.
Yeah.
Like, oh, guess I love this person forever.
Right. And then the next one is agape, and this is kind of like the universal love, and I think this is kind of the love that a lot of Christians would speak about, or pantheists will speak about, where it's kind of just a love of everything and everyone. It's kind of, it's like a selfless love for others. It's really getting to the place of loving people in spite of their craziness, loving the planet. Kind of it's utilitarian in a way. I mean, I'm thinking like what this kind of love is. How can you love everybody the best, and how can you carry yourself in your life to do that? So to me, it speaks kind of to humanism and to pantheism, right? Like what actions can I do in my life that will help everybody the most, and again, that's craziness, right? Because no matter what action you do, you could probably make a case that somewhere along the way it may hurt anyway, but what actions will do the most for the most people? That's the way I kind of think about that. But it's a universal love of loving just loving humanity, loving
basically
loving
your surroundings.
Your surroundings. Yeah. And then the other ones, these kind of hit to the first one. The lotus love, it's kind of like playful, flirtatious love. It's kind of like the butterflies in your stomach. It's almost like that stage before the I don't know. It's kind of it's a innocent, immature kind of love, stage before the eros type of love, I guess.
don't know, like you never felt it.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm all about flirtation, right? I think it's a very healthy thing to do. Flirt. but it's kind of it's I don't know, it's almost like I think it's a type of love that can be cultivated in an appropriate way with somebody that's not your significant other, but is somebody that you find attractive or something.
Mm.
It can be, it could be a kind of fun type of love without, I'm gonna say, without misleading people.
Okay.
If you use it appropriately.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's just move on. So number 6, pragma. It's committed, long-lasting love.
Marriage.
Yeah.
The opposite of ludus.
Yeah, it's the opposite of ludus. Yeah, it's marriage. It's cultivating a marriage, cultivating your partner. The example used is you see this love with people who have been married 25, 50, 60 years and are walking in the park or sitting in the park and holding hands. So yeah, I think of the older married couple who really kind of exemplify this type of love. It's like the long lasting love.
Keoni, I had a patient in the skilled nursing facility one time. I was walking with him and he starts telling me about his deceased wife. And then he takes me back to his room. He pulls out a book that he's had published that was love letters he wrote his wife since the day she died to whenever that stopped. And I mean, talk about pragma. I mean, you're reading like, he's, flip to this page and I'm reading like a letter he wrote to her on like her 4th birthday. And like, it's, it's just bringing tears to your eyes of just whatever her name was, Judy, today would have been your 74th birthday and you would have looked so beautiful. And it was just a extreme, awesome experience for me to see of pragma.
That's neat.
Yeah,
that's really neat to see. When how lucky is that? Because not a lot of people get there. I mean, hope I think I'm well on my way. I hope you the same, where you just have this like love for your wife, your partner, that just kind of builds on itself year after year, no matter, you got through all the trials and tribulations that you guys go through. It just kind of helps build more onto that foundation and, kind of builds love more intensely and stuff like that. And you get to cultivate all these kinds of love, but really it goes back to that foundational love that you just kind of cement in completely. Yeah, that's neat. I've had some patients like that too.
Yeah. Real touching experience.
And then Philia, that's self-love. And then we talked about that, right? Like, so Fromm talks about,
Philia really, or Philatia?
Yeah, they're kind of the same. No, this is Philia. So Philautia. Self-love. This is a love I think that's absolutely necessary to kind of experience foundational love, or all these other kind of pseudo loves that we're talking about right now. I feel like this is where you need to have this to kind of be able to basically just help other people, which is a form of love. To help other beings in your life, which is a form of love. And then number 8, sometimes I see this on the list, sometimes I don't, but number 8 is mania. Obsessive love kind of has a negative connotation to it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like you definitely, it doesn't have to be a destructive form of love. But if you're obsessing over your love object to such a point that it is destructive, then that's problematic. So this one kind of has more of a negative connotation. That's why I don't see it a lot of times in in lists of the loves, the types of Greek love or pseudo loves listed out there.
Yeah, to me, it seems like you should focus on being obsessed. You should be obsessive about being lovable.
Right.
Which, interesting enough, Fromm. So that's kind of, I feel like as I was going through my teenage years and whatnot, I was kind of focused on I think he calls it like a personality transaction or something like that in the podcast, and talking about each time you lose a love, or you enter a next stage in your life, or whatever the case may be, you move on to a new love, or you have a breakup or whatever, you kind of go through this period where you almost audit your personality and habits, or whatever the case may be, and try and mold those into something that's more lovable. He talks about how that's not necessarily a great thing and can result in this transactional, like this personality transaction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's almost, to me, seems like it could be committed to your own growth, which is kind of something we continually circle around as a form of love.
Right.
So I don't necessarily think it's an all bad thing either. But I do think focusing on you being lovable, and thus will make you love yourself, is kind of more positive in this obsessive nature for this.
Yeah, and I think
love type.
and I think if you focus on yourself as love, then you don't get the negativity that comes with the mania type love, which can often result in obsessiveness, jealousy, madness, controlling behavior.
Yeah,
which is really the opposite of love.
Yeah, it's a very scared type of love. Yeah.
Right. And then I think I was certainly told this when I got married, and I know it's a thing, that a book that's out there talking about the love languages, the 5 love languages, and how people give love and accept love. And I think this kind of speaks to like knowing your partner, or your wife, spouse, whatever, to know how they like love. And we're talking about, some people like words of affirmation, right? Like they feel like they are loved, or want to hear like I love you, and they're fulfilled with positive compliments. Some people like acts of service, like making sure the house is clean for them, or going out of your way to, I don't know, pick them up, or whatever. And that's the way some people like to either give love or receive love. Receiving gifts, where you give gifts to people. I mean, I it's very sweet. I can't do it, but I have a friend who every I should every like Friday or every weekend, he brings flowers for his wife.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's really sweet.
Yeah. You shouldn't say.
Yeah, I think if I did that, Jillian would fall over, but maybe I should start doing that. But anyway, so giving gifts, receiving gifts. Another way is for quality time, and just how much time you're spending with them. If they're not getting enough time spent with them, then they can feel unloved. So somebody who's constantly traveling, not with their significant other, and they're not there, can feel unloved. And then physical touch is another one. So physical touch, anything from hand holding, cuddling to sex, any type of physical touch. And if that's not there, then some people can feel unloved. And the reason why those things matter are because some people really, I'm sure there's a lot of overlap, but some people really, define love in a big way based on these things. So,
well, I wouldn't poo-poo them. When like I was talking to Haley about my wife about this podcast on the honeymoon, and we were kind of talking about this, and she actually brought up the love languages. I was like, I've actually been trying to figure yours out, and then told me kind of what hers is. I kind of downloaded that information, started dropping those words of affirmation all over the place, and I really noticed a difference just in how light and like breezy she became from constantly getting the type of love that speaks to her the most.
Yeah, and I think that's why this book is so popular, because I really do think this book, I mean, one book that can really help marriages out, this is one. I mean, it's like really figuring out what your partner like wants and needs, or because what does it ultimately do? It makes not only their life more beautiful, but it makes your life easier and beautiful too, you know?
It grows you into a better lover and grows them into a better lover. That's what it's all about.
Yep. So anyway, the love languages, words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch. I think we can make a case for most people wanting all 5 of those at different parts of their life and stuff, but some people, one or the other really.
If you had to pick your big one, Keoni, what's your big one out of the 5?
What would be my let's see. I would say acts of service is probably mine. I was certainly
can't wait to rub your back next time I see you.
I'm look, you better been waiting on that. It's about time you're being a good friend. Jeez. So anyway, so with that being said, one of my favorite poets, love poets out there is Khalil Gibran. And so why don't we end with some of his quotes, which I think are pretty cool.
Awesome.
Anyway, his books are wonderful. I have his book sitting in our house, right on there. I think it's on the coffee table, but anyway, it's a great book of all his love poems. So here are some of my favorites, but there are a lot out there. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed, for love is sufficient unto love. And think not you can direct the course of love. If it finds you worthy, directs your course. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. So anyway, that's, it's not something that you can kind of capture. To me, it's something that you need to kind of cultivate to get the most out of. And by doing that, then you can really experience love. It kind of fulfills itself in front of you.
Well, and that's a lot of what Fromm was saying too, and that it is it's an active passive thing. Like it's an active action, but it passively kind of finds its way back to you.
Right, which speaks to this one in a sense. Love one another, but not make a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup.
I do like that one.
Yeah, so that's I think that kind of speaks to trying to get away from this transactional concept of love.
Yeah.
And then if you love somebody, let them go. For if they return, they were always yours. If they don't, they never were. And that's really unconditional love, right? I mean, if you truly love somebody, you're not going to cage them. You're not going to control them. You're gonna, whether it hurts you or not, you want them to do what they want to do and get the most out of their life at their short time here.
Yeah.
So
you support their desires.
You're gonna support the desires, no matter how, I don't know, awful that may feel to you. Like somebody wanting to leave a marriage or something, or whatever. You would, if you love them and really get down and really think about it, that's why I want to do this podcast. You're gonna be like, I love you and I want the best for you. You do what you need to do.
Yeah, I see where you got that quote. I think that was like your favorite quote to me at 16, 17 or 18 or whatever. Nah, you said that to me quite a lot.
No, well, that's one of my favorite, because I think it hits by him. I think it hits home to like, okay, that's really getting to the base of unconditional. It's like let the person be who they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, I think this podcast is a good podcast that will lead into our next few podcasts that we'll be doing. We'll talk about the golden rule a little bit more, morality, where it comes from, that type of thing. It's kind of the survival of the friendliest thing, turning the survival of the fittest whole paradigm upside down. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I think this leads into that. Anything else we should talk about on this one?
I love you guys. Love you, Keoni. Thanks for
listening. You guys too. And I promise you, I'll still love you whether you gives us some thumbs up or not, or anything like that. But
yeah,
yes,
shoot, even if
please.
you give us a thumbs down, we'll love you. I mean,
actually, we will.
Yeah.
That means people are listening.
Absolutely. Right. All right, everybody. Until next week, and we will be with you next week. We will talk to you then. Until then, be well.
Take care.